Good evening and welcome to the London Borough of Hammersmith and Fulham's Cabinet meeting. We have a busy agenda tonight, so I will run through the agenda in a moment. But before I do, I should introduce myself as the leader of the council, Stephen Cowan. And given that we are in the middle of an international emergency, I think it is only right that I update people on exactly where we are. I am pleased to report that the council has managed to test some 20,000 of our local citizens, and that the reports of the service have been extremely positive. The reason for the testing, I want to stress, it is not to give people assurances that they are not infected and can go about their business. We are still in an emergency, and there is a small possibility that you could be tested, but because you've only just contracted the contagion, still pass it on to others. So that would not be something that we would be doing. The reason for the testing is very clearly so we can measure where the contagion is in our borough, how it is spreading, and indeed what variant it is. And as we are aware, not only do we have the UK variant, which is 70% more transferable and contagious than the previous variant, but there is now the South African variant, and I understand the Brazilian variant in communities around ours. So these are very difficult times, and I know people are making huge sacrifices. Everybody is extremely grateful for that, because when you look on the front line at the people who are fighting to save lives or keep people safe, or people who are shielded, looked after, and physically and mentally healthy, then there is a tremendous amount of work going on. Now, there is light on the horizon. 12,000 of our citizens in Hammersmith and Fulham have been given the vaccine. That is extremely positive. We are working constructively with the government on that front, and that does seem to be going very well. But these are the times when we look at these variants and the level of contagion, that we've got some simple messages. Please wear a mask when you're outside near anybody else. Try and stay more than 2 meters away from people. And most of all, keep your hands sanitized, carry sanitizer. But anytime you touch anything outside of your home or go outside of your home, make sure you are punctilious in keeping your hands clean and not touching your face. Finally, I would stress, we've just got to stay in our homes. It's just going to be a few weeks now until March, when the clocks go back. The flowers are already pushing through the grass. Spring is on the way. The nights are getting lighter. I do think this will be a better year than last year, but I want everyone to understand where we're at. And once again, thank you to our amazing council officers, who many of whom have not had a break in months. All of them who, whenever I call them, day or night, 7 days a week, are on the job working and focused on keeping Hammersmith and Fulham safe. So that's the main introduction. In terms of the economy, then, as you know, we aim to be the best place for business, and originally in the European Union, now in Europe. And there are many people still on furlough, some 13,000 people on furlough. Unemployment has doubled since last March. And so there are any of our neighbours and friends who live amongst us who are not only struggling, but fear they will struggle in the future. Now, I can say there are some very big challenges ahead of us as the year unfolds on the economic front. We're lobbying government strongly for different economic measures. This is a time, I think, for something big and Keynesian, much bigger than Roosevelt's New Deal, or even possibly the Marshall Plan after the Second World War. But we need a very big, bold plan, and not only this council, but other councils in the Western London Alliance, and indeed authorities across the country are pushing for that sort of economic plan. But we will be bringing forward a series of extra business measures on top of the ones we've already done. Okay, that's my introduction. I will now move on to the Cabinet. Can I confirm the Cabinet members in attendance? Can I begin with Councillor Sue Nimmo?
Good evening, everyone.
Hello. Councillor Ben Coleman.
Evening.
Councillor Adam Connell.
Good evening.
Councillor Larry Culhane.
Good evening, everyone.
Councillor Wesley Harcourt.
Present.
Councillor Lisa Homan.
Good evening, everyone.
Councillor Andrew Jones.
Good evening, everyone.
Councillor Sue McMillan.
Good evening.
Good evening. And I have apologies from Max Schmidt. I am happy to explain that he and his partner, Claire Schmidt, had a beautiful baby boy, I think about 48 hours ago. And so it's quite understandable that he's not here. And I think I speak on behalf of the whole council when I send him our huge congratulations. Well done to and Max. Okay, in attendance we also have Kim Smith, who's the Chief Executive, and Rhian Davis, who's the Director of Resources. I'll now move on to item number 1, which is minutes of a Cabinet meeting held on the 4th of January 2021. Are those minutes agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Okay.
Agreed.
All right. Can we note the apologies of Councillor Max Schmidt in our apologies part of the minutes, please?
Yes, noted.
Are there any declarations of interest?
No.
No.
Okay. Thank you very much. Item number 4, the revenue and budget council tax levels 2021-2022. This will be going to the full council at the end of February. Though we've had to actually delay the budget meeting because the Mayor of London had not yet set his particular council tax precept, which pays for policing and a variety of other pan-London measures. So there is a new date, and that will be published, or indeed is published on the council's website. It's a very self-explanatory report. Can I move and ask the Cabinet, is there any comments or any questions on this report? In that case, is this report agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you very much. 4-year capital programme and capital strategy for 21-22. Again, this is a very straightforward report. It's an update on the regular reports we have at the committee. Are there any comments or questions on that report? Is that report agreed?
Agreed.
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 No one disagrees, in which case the report is agreed. Thank you very much. Next, item number 6, capital programme, monitor and budget variations, a very self-explanatory report. Details are in the report. Are there any points anyone would like to make on item number 6? Nope, in which case is the report agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you. Item number 7, similarly, Treasury Management Strategy document, a very much part of the business process of running the council. Very thorough report. It's a report that regularly comes to this Cabinet. There is nothing controversial within that report. I can assure you, people have read the report. Are there any questions or comments on it, please? Is that report agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Similarly with item number 8, is that any questions or comments on that report? Is that report agreed?
Agreed. Agreed.
Agreed.
Agreed.
No one disagrees. Abstains, then thank you very much. Item number 9, housing revenue account. Councillor Homan, Cabinet Member for Housing. Would you like to introduce your report?
Briefly, if I'm main recommendations are on page 211 and 212. The which sets out what price for our council tenants. And you will see that it is 1.5% this year, which is 5% as CPI in September, plus the 1% that is within government policy to allow us to set our rent. Similarly, for shared ownership and other fees and charges and service charges will be going up by 0.5%, which is what the CPI was in September of 2020. That is slightly lower than I think we had anticipated, the CPI. So we do have some pressures on the housing revenue account going forward, which we will be carefully looking at over the coming year. But I'm pleased to say that our rents are still low across compared to many of our other London boroughs. And we also have reserves which are around average for London boroughs. So I will leave it there and happy to take any questions or comments.
Okay, any questions or comments? Please make yourself known. Please, should be able to press a little button on the computer if anyone wants to speak. Right, Rhiannon Davis.
Yes, I do wish to speak. It's Councillor Alford. Am I permitted to speak?
Yes.
I'm very concerned that this HRA account was not provided at the last housing scrutiny panel. It was not possible to scrutinise this report. And I have read it since, and I have got grave concerns about it. And I think that it is unacceptable that this was not provided.
Councillor Homan?
Yes, there was. I'm not sure quite how it happened, but Councillor Alford is quite right in that it did not appear on the PAC agenda. It did, however, go to the Housing Representatives Forum. So residents, our engaged tenants and residents reps did comment on it, and they, I can assure Cabinet, were content, and they did have their opportunity as council residents to feed into this process. That was about 10 days before this finalised Cabinet report came to us.
Okay, and why did it not go to the PAC? I mean, Councillor Alford, did you ask for it to be on the PAC and were rejected, or what happened?
No, it just didn't appear. They decided they weren't presenting it. There was no, I mean, normally it is always on a PAC. So opposition councillors can have a look at it. It appears there was an oops, we forgot.
I believe, if my understanding is, there was some confusion because the PACs were merged, and so somehow or another this didn't get into the system to go to PAC, which was unfortunate. And I'm afraid, as myself, I didn't spot it until it was too late, because it was after the agenda had gone out.
So I would point out it is excellent that our residents have been able to scrutinise it. It was extremely unfortunate that you didn't allow me, as the opposition spokesman on that PAC, to have anything to say. And I do have concern.
Would you like to say now then? I'm quite happy. Yes,
I will keep it brief because we have a very packed agenda. What I'm concerned about is the balances and how they're diminishing. We are, of course, living in difficult times, but it is noted in the report and they are going down considerably. And I am concerned. And I would have made that point at the PAC meeting.
Yeah, well, we too are concerned. I mean, as you know, the government changed the rules shortly after they came into office in 2010 to alter the funding for the housing revenue account, and it was warned that balances would go down as part of those government cuts. So I do think it is something that concerns us all. I know the officers are extremely pressed on the need to balance the budget and indeed to improve the balances. And that is that there are measures being brought forward in this year. I can only apologise that it wasn't brought forward to the PAC. I do get a little irritated when officers drop the ball as such and have a very short fuse these days for such things. So I will find out what's gone wrong and can apologise to you for that.
Well, thank you.
I'm extremely glad that I'm extremely glad that the residents have seen it and backed it. And I can tell you the administration is determined to keep rents low, to keep service charges low, and to keep balances strong, and is taking measures to do that. And the record, I think, speaks for itself. Okay, is there anybody else on that? Any Cabinet members? Councillor Homan, you've got your hand up. Is that a legacy hand?
Thank you. I was just going to say, yes, there are some clear, if you read the report carefully, there are some clear indicators as to why we are in this situation. I think there's two that I would particularly like to pick up on. One is obviously we have had COVID this year, so that has had an impact. And we're also very much focused on our compliance-based capital programme. and the goalposts on that are constantly moving with new regulations coming from government all the time. So those are just two external factors, as well as other factors that we will be managing very carefully over the forthcoming year.
That's right. And I think it's fair to say that the council set aside £20 million for our fire safety plus, coming up with a similar time to Grenfell. I think people understand the importance of such measures, and indeed making these buildings safe, keeping them fit for purpose, keeping them clean, healthy and nice places to live is a big priority for the council, and all of that eats into funds. All right, can I just ask then, is everyone happy to support that report?
Agreed.
Anyone agree?
Yep.
Okay, so that's agreed then, and no one's abstaining. All right, next then we have item number 10, Policing and Crime Commission report. I think I'm going to introduce this as I've had a number of letters from the public, because there does seem to be a terrible misunderstanding. Indeed, I spoke to one or two members of the public today, just because I knew them, and I phoned them after getting their letters. There is, and I state this categorically, no plans to abolish the police ward panels. And to go further than that, not only are we not doing it, we have no intention to ever do it. So I hope that clarifies things. That has been the position since we set up the crime policing panel a couple of years ago. And whilst I appreciate there might be some misunderstanding out there, I think everyone should know that since this administration came into office, we've had a series of commissions on a very wide range of subjects, from improving accessibility and making the best borough for disabled people. That was a report independently led by disabled people. We had a report from a very impressive couple of entrepreneurs on how do we make Hammersmith and Fulham the best place for business in the European Union, as we were at the time that the report was published. How do we improve our parks? How do we make this a best place for older people to live and to make sure services are taking care of all their needs? There has been report after report on everything from climate change emergency and ecological emergency to air quality and much else. And these are a shift from what we inherited, the bunker mentality that saw actions often happening without any resident input, where we sought to find constructive ways for public to feed in without fear or favour. And so their advice is to give us that advice, and these are independent reports. Now, whilst I appreciate there may be some political mischief, party political mischief all around these things, this report is in that vein. It's an independent report done by people who were not paid, but supported by a policy officer who sat and looked at all the different issues, and they have told it to us as they see fit. As with all reports, we will take some things and we will not take other things. And that, I think, is a sign of the listening that the council is doing. Now, I appreciate some people might have been misled into thinking this is a report that the council will accept in full. There's very few reports where we've done that. I think the independent disabled people and the business reports were the only two. And therefore, I just want to clarify that, given I've had so many letters. So there is, I think, the report wasn't well served by whoever wrote the report, because what should have been a comment just saying this is an independent report has come in with a whole bunch of irrelevant and splurge, which is unnecessary and may have added to the confusion. So if that has happened, I apologise. Sharon, I think it's right just to clarify that confusion, but we amend this report. Sharon Lee is the Director of the Environment, which also includes crime matters. Can you bring forward what your suggestion is and how that report is amended? The council's report, not the independent commission.
Yes, Leader, and apologies for that. The report actually just asks Cabinet to note the recommendations of the Policing and Crime Commission. There was a detailed pack which went through all of the recommendations, and it was made very clear at Policy and Accountability Committee that the council isn't able to support all of the recommendations, and that the specific recommendations it does support would be subject to a detailed report. So the only additional amendment to the report, Chair, is that Appendix 1, if we just delete H&F officer response and it just has Police and Crime Commission recommendations, that clarifies that, because that is just a list of the recommendations. The report is clearly for noting, it's not saying accepting. And in the finance impact, Chair, it says the majority of the recommendations set out in Appendix 1 relevant to the council. Not all of the recommendations are accepted, of course, and if we amend that, then that will be crystal clear. Thank you, Chair.
And as you say, that was made extremely clear at the Policy and Accountability Committee, which looked at that particular report. Okay, any questions or comments from on this issue, please? All right, is this report agreed as an amended?
Excuse me, Councillor Cowan.
Okay, Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Councillor Cowan, and I do appreciate both your comments at the start of the meeting as well as those to Councillor Alford regarding the housing pack, as well as the points you've made just now with regard to this item. I have spoken to the monitoring officer about this and the implications of this, agenda item, and we are somewhat reassured by the comments you've made today. But one thing that I just want to put on record is that that this was debated at length at the housing pack back in September, and I think there's been a huge amount of worry and concern caused by this agenda item that has caused people who are involved with the ward panels and other aspects of community police engagement in our borough to get in touch with me, with you, with I'm sure other councillors as well. And I accept mistakes can be made when agendas are put together and report items are drafted. And I do accept what you're saying with regards to some of the recommendations are not going to be taken forward. But I think it's exceptionally important that that is made crystal clear, which I hope it now has been tonight, because we are incredibly indebted to what volunteers do in all of our wards with regard to the ward panels. And obviously we debated this at length back in 2018, and it just seems a bit of a shame that there's been continued nervousness and frustration and concern from those individuals because of this report today. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. I'm going to move on, but I will conclude by, have you got anything different to add to what your leader has said, Councillor Bottlebrank-Fowler?
Well, I've got more detail because, this is very important. You've mentioned the ward panels. However, you haven't mentioned the IAG. So could you answer that as well? Are you going to try and change how that is organised? Right, okay. Councillor Harris? I haven't finished, Councillor Cowan. That was just an interim question. All right, well, ask all your questions, and then I will ask Councillor Lloyd. Well, I'd like to get the answer to that. I'd like to get the answers very clearly, one at a time, please. Okay, I'm sorry, Councillor Bottlebrank-Fowler. You seem to have forgotten how this system works. I'm the chair, so I will allow you an intervention. You haven't been here for, what, 2 years? So you may have not be aware of how the cabinet system works, but there is no right under the rules that was written under your administration for you to take part. You take part at the discretion of the chair. Now, these are rules that you put in place when you were the administration. So what I'm saying to you is I am allowing you to take part, but if you give me your questions, then Councillor Lloyd Harris gives me her questions, then we will answer them fully. So if you do that, otherwise I will move on to Councillor Lloyd Harris. Councillor Cowan, may I remind you that for the brief time that I was in Cabinet, we always allowed you to speak and your other colleagues whenever they wished. It's rather like the council meeting when you don't want to listen to residents' questions and you allow only the 20 minutes and you don't extend the time. Right, I will move. Obviously I'm irritating you because I'm very near the knuckle. Okay, so I want to know about the IAG and your views on that. I want to know why you would actually authorise bringing a paper like this, even if only to note that actually is the same as what was brought to PAC in September, and it was the Environment PAC, where in fact you weren't at that part, where you heard officers, Mr. Matthew Hooper himself say that the 3 recommendations were not agreed. This is in addition, I mean, this is very clear. I re-listened to the YouTube over the weekend. I'm very clear at what I said at the time. There is huge concern that the council is trying to interfere illegally with the police. And it just strikes me that I would want an explanation as to why you actually think it's a good idea to bring this to Cabinet at all. Why would you do that and cause the upset that you have over the last, since the agenda was published, the amount of emails and concern, it's just so unnecessary. And I would like your Cabinet, please, to vote to withdraw this paper.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Lloyd Harris.
Thank you very much. This is my first appearance here, so I appreciate the fact that you allow me to ask a couple of questions. Yeah. Would also like to reinforce the IAG issue. I think there are some issues in this document that actually the council doesn't have any jurisdiction over. So whilst you're saying you'd like to note this, I would have hoped you might have withdrawn it and actually just address the issues that are within your remit to deal with. Leave those to the Met that are up to them, and those that you have no jurisdiction to actually remove that, bring it back so there were actually maybe something constructive could come out of it. But I'm glad you clarified the Safer Neighbourhood panels remain, because I'm, as far as I'm aware, I'm still the only councillor that's a chair of one, so I appreciate that. But we do need confirmation, as Councillor Brockleback-Fowler has said, about the IAG. And just one, and I excuse me for asking the question, but can you tell me why the council believes it is going to be better at dealing with crime, minor though it might be, than the Metropolitan Police? Thank you.
Sorry, what was that last bit again, please?
Yeah, the last part was, why does the council believe that they are in a better position to deal with crime, even minor crime, than the Metropolitan Police? Thank you.
Right. Okay. Well, quite a lot in there. The first point is I won't answer them in the right order, just because I think it's easier if I just clarify where we are. These are independent reports. Okay. They are written by residents who are not paid, and they are asked to give us their considered opinion, having looked at a vast amount of data and hearing testimony from people all around the borough who have either suffered crime or indeed on any other issue that these independent commissions sit on. Each and every independent commission is presented to the Cabinet as an independent report. Now, I appreciate that the Conservative group is looking a bit like buses at the moment, because we haven't seen any at the Cabinet. Is it a year, 2 years? For a very long time, and then 4 come along at once. All right, so there may be some misunderstanding of it. Okay, but the Cabinet is here to make decisions. It's not a policy and accountability committee which debates which bits to take and which not to take. And what often people can do is submit a petition or a commission report to the Cabinet. We are taking the report, but as is being clear throughout, and as I think I said in my introduction, we'll take some bits and we'll not do other bits. So that's why we will take the report. It is a misunderstanding of the process that anyone would ask me to not take the report. Doesn't mean it's council policy. It means we are thanking the commissioners for their hard work and dedication in writing the report. That's what we're doing tonight, and I'm not going to not do that. It would be impolite. Secondly, and I extend that, as Councillor Brown said, to all the volunteers who make our borough a strong place. There are lots of unpaid people on ward panels that are taking actions and working with us in administration to make our borough a safer place. So the reason we reject the recommendation on that is because we think the ward panels do a good job. And that's why we have consistently said throughout, we will not be getting it. They are also the responsibility of a MOPAC, although when it comes down to any meetings that I've ever had with any ward chairs when there's been a surge of crime in the area, it is invariably the council that pays for the CCTV or changes the lighting to make an area safer, or changes the geography in some way, or as we have done recently, spent £4 million on a new gangs unit to go after the criminals who are enslaving our children and trying to get them to become gangs members, and also to put the largest number of council-funded law enforcement officers onto the streets, which we're also doing after our police teams were unfortunately merged, and we needed to have a greater presence on our streets. So these are all things that are happening, and we are aware that we do that in concert with many of the residents who give up their time, whether they're authors of this report or members of ward police panels. Same with the IAG, that is also a police panel. There is no plan or intention to ever get rid of the IAG. So I hope that clarifies matters, and I hope that now you've heard that, you will take that and explain this is a misunderstanding of the process rather than any plan to get rid of ward panels. And I hope you will sincerely explain that to people. I will certainly be sending letters out clarifying that, and I hope that's the end of this once and for all. Councillor Stainton, do you have anything new to add? Would you want to? You're on mute. Councillor Stainton, you're on mute. Have we lost Councillor Stainton? Oh, we should give her a minute to come back. Councillor Lloyd Harris.
Fine. Thank you for that. Could you explain a little bit, because it's terribly confusing in the report, about how crime is to be reported and to whom, and about the sharing potentially of confidential information?
Look, I'm not going to go into the details of the report. This is an independent report. We're simply accepting it tonight. So I'm more than happy to do that through the policy and accountability committees. But we're very keen to get real crime reported. You talk to anybody who's been involved in the policing process, and they will often say to you that they don't think the crime figures are a true reflection of what often goes on. And we will all know people who've been victims of crime, but who refused to report it. This is a moving feast. We'll work closely with the police, as we are doing at the moment, to make sure that we have an accurate reflection of the crime picture. That crime in all its pernicious forms, particularly the most violent, is a key priority, if not the biggest overall priority, long-standing priority of the administration. And that's why we're putting, at a time of huge austerity cuts and huge cuts through COVID, and indeed challenges and other things such as financing Hammersmith Bridge, we are putting vast amounts of money into crime fighting, and the message should go out to criminals that there will not be any place for them to hide as we up our efforts to get them, lock them away, and make sure that our citizens are safe. Now, I can see the happy news that Councillor has returned to us, in which case I will call you to give your question, Councillor Stainton, and then I'm going to wind it up from there. So you're on mute again, Councillor Stainton. Oh no. You just need to press the mute button, Councillor Stainton. It looks like a microphone, old-fashioned microphone.
Is it not possible for David to unmute Councillor Stainton, perhaps? Is that possible?
No. Sadly. Well, it looks like we're not going to hear from Councillor Stainton tonight, and I do have to crack on. Councillor Bottlebank, I'm going to allow you one more intervention, but please make sure it's not repetitive, and if it's adding any new light rather than heat, I would particularly welcome that.
Thank you, Councillor Cowan. It's about the reporting of crime and the 2.2.1 section about the crime helpline. Can you confirm that this is not something you think you can go ahead with? It was one of the things that was not recommended by Mr. Hooper. I just want to hear you say it, as you've said about the IAG and the ward panels.
Look, I don't want to dismiss the work of this of what the residents have done. So there is something within how we make it easy to report crime, because the 111 service doesn't work and 999 is often difficult to get through to. That said, I don't envisage we'll be going with the exact recommendation that's been made, and indeed we would want to work with residents and the police to come up with new and better ways to keep an accurate reflection of how crimes are reported. So no, we're not going with that particular recommendation, but the spirit of it, I think, of trying to get a more accurate reflection of what crimes are, making it easier for people to report crimes, is something that we will explore with all our partners. Now, as I said earlier, I'm not going to go through each and every aspect of this report. You are a member of that pack. These are issues there. It's not policy, as I've now explained to you, and hopefully you accept. What we're doing is thanking the residents for their report and accepting it as a piece of work done by the report. The policy development of what will be taken forward going forward will be a matter for the pack, a matter for the administration, and there will be due process in the clear light of day where public will be able to intervene, as will any elected representative such as yourself. So I'm going to leave it there on that.
Just one more.
Oh, Councillor Cowan, please may I speak?
I'm going to draw it to an end there, I'm afraid. Because I think we've had everything clarified that I think was a concern, and we do have a busy agenda to move forward. So can I therefore, are there any other comments from the Cabinet on this report?
I think Councillor Donovan should be allowed to speak.
I'd like to speak. My brief is Neighbourhood Watch. I would very much like to speak on my brief.
I'm sorry, I've already explained, this is not, anything other than the Cabinet meeting, and I've heard what everyone has said, and I'm now going to move on. This is what we're going to do, and I'd be grateful, Councillor Bottlebank-Fowler, particularly if you would follow the rules. It should not be lost on you. That's what we're asking all citizens to do out there with the increasing crime report. And in this instance, I'm asking you not to interrupt. Anything else from the Cabinet, please, on this report? Is that report agreed?
Noted. Noted.
Sorry, noted. Yeah. And so anyone not want to note it or have an objection to noting it?
Yeah.
In the Cabinet, in which case, thank you very much. Can I ask everybody not in the Cabinet, but even including members of the Cabinet who aren't speaking, to go on to mute, please? This is a public Cabinet meeting.
I would very much like to speak
on
Neighbourhood Watch, please. It is my brief. It has been my brief since 2000.
Okay, can we just have some order here? I'm not going to have this descend as previous council meetings have descended. People need to know what I've already said. So we've now moved off that and we're moving on to item number 11, the schools budget. Councillor Culhane, can I ask you to speak on the schools budget, please? Is there anything you'd like to add to that, please?
Thanks very much, Councillor Cowan. This paper sets out the education funding for schools, early year settings and other settings in the borough. over the course of the next academic year. Not many people know, but actually education funding is provided by government, not by the council. Our role in this process is simply to passport the money through to schools and to work with them to look at how we can distribute it in a way that helps our residents most within the regulations in which most money is passed on directly straight to the schools. You may remember from the general election campaign in 2019, a key pillar of the Conservative manifesto was to increase education funding. You only have to look at the first page of this report to see that has not been forthcoming yet, which is disappointing considering obviously the severe impact on education that the COVID-19 pandemic is having, not just in terms of building up many problems that we're going to have to overcome down the line, but also schools at the moment are having to move heaven and earth in order to make their schools as safe as possible for the young people who are in school at the moment, because schools aren't shut. They are open to young people of key workers and those who are priority children, as they have been throughout this entire pandemic. And the cost of that has mainly been borne by the schools without much help from the government, and they've also had to try and tackle things like the digital divide. So yeah, disappointing that there's not a greater increase of funding, but the information is there. The schools budget is agreed by schools forum, so the schools have had the opportunity to scrutinise this, and they decided we simply work for them in this process in setting that money out. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, any questions for the Cabinet Member for Children and Education? In which case is that report agreed?
Agreed.
I would like to say, Councillor Kane, if you could send my congratulations onto your team. We've not only had funding cut, we've also had funding that should rightfully be in the city, the wider city of London, across the capital, shifted to the shires, and it does seem to be a direct attack on what had been 20 years of progress in London, if not longer, in educational attainment. So the fact that not only are we doing this within the school's budget, but we're paying for all children to eat, to have lunches as schools are closed, both now and in outside term times, along with the digital divide measures we've taken to ensure that the most disadvantaged children are getting access to technology. There's been a huge battle in the last 9 months to make sure that we've kept children educated in the most horrendous of circumstances. So please pass on the thanks of everyone in the administration for the fantastic work the teachers are doing, the head teachers, the teaching assistants, and indeed everyone in the Education and Children's Department. It's very much appreciated. We agree with that report, or am I right? Did I ask for agreement? I think I did. So that is agreed. Okay. Immediate schools capital programme of works, item number 12. Can Larry, I think this is with you again to introduce.
Yeah, there'll be a paper coming in the next couple of months about a medium-term plan from April 21 to look at capital works to the school estate across the borough. This paper is short-term and is just outlining some immediate works that we would like to get done across the school estate. So like I said, there'll be a paper coming in the next couple of months for a medium-term plan, but this is some immediate work that we'd like to do, and happy to take questions.
Okay. I mean, do you want to set out how that work is going to happen, given that we're in lockdown? I mean, has there been any new challenges on that? I think a lot of people want to ask, because people are pretty keen to hear how those capital works are going to be unfolding.
Yep, so as you can see in the paper, some of the works relate to COVID secure works. One of the greatest challenges that head teachers have had to face in this pandemic, aside from sort of inertia and confusion from the government, has been to completely reimagine what the school day looks like with a COVID lens on. And that means breaking down every single facet of what a normal school day looks like and rebuilding it again with COVID considered in order, because no one wants young people back in school settings in totality more than head teachers and teaching assistants. They dedicate their livelihoods to those young people. So they've put in an awful lot of work to make those schools as secure as possible. Some of these works help ensure that. Some of the other works are just things that we want to get out of the way as soon as possible to help aid that. And there'll be more stuff coming through in a further paper moving forward, looking at the medium term. Obviously, we are working closely with the schools, that we look, help with the capital, bearing in mind COVID challenges, considering they could go on for some time, which we will look at in the paper. But again, like you say, Councillor Cowan, I think I speak for everyone when we give a heartfelt tribute to all of the professionals who work in school settings who have, you mentioned officers at the start of the meeting. Similarly, they have barely had a day off since this pandemic started in March, and we'll do everything we can to support them on this journey in order to make it as safe as possible for young people in this borough. But we will pay tribute to them for the work they do, for the dedication they give to our young people. And thanks very much.
All right, thank you very much. Is item 12 agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Anyone disagree? Thank you. In that case, the item is agreed. We'll move swiftly on to item 13, which is a public health nursing procurement strategy. Can I ask Councillor Coleman to introduce the report, please?
Yes, we're looking at taking a new approach towards the health visiting school nursing service, one which is going to give us an office who worked quite hard at doing benchmarking with other councils and looking at a range of things and talking to families, but one which we think is going to give us better outcomes for less money, which is what we're always aiming to achieve. To do this, we just need to hold over the existing service for another 5 months, and that's what this report does while we do a full procurement strategy. But at the end of it, I hope we're going to get more families covered in an even better way for less cost to this council. And one of the things I'm particularly pleased about here is we are going to be co-producing this as far as possible under the current circumstances, which was the approach we're trying to take to everything we're doing now. And also 10% of the value of the contract is going to be the social value that the procurement people who tender can offer, which is again an approach we're trying to drive right throughout our contracts. So yeah. I hope you've had a chance to read it, and well, I know you've had a chance to read it and you find it interesting.
Well, it's a very good piece of work. Getting this right is very, very important to us because, as all of us know in public life, it's often the people hidden away in their homes who are the most voiceless and would be easiest to ignore. But actually, they've been the first priority for us in many ways since we've been in office, not only abolishing charges for home care and vastly cutting by about 90% the price of Meals on Wheels, but also in trying to give them a voice through a variety of different independent commissions and now through co-production. So I think this is a good way forward, and I thank you and your team, Ben, for this very solid piece of work. Does anyone have any questions on this? Okay, can I ask, does the Cabinet vote to agree this way forward?
Agreed.
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 No one voting against. In which case, can I move on to item 14, forward plan for key decisions? As I said, this is a Cabinet meeting. It's not a select committee. It's not the full council where we debate things. This is a business meeting where we agree reports that have been through often extensive process. And as we take the forward plan of key decisions, I can assure everyone watching that's exactly what's happening. Is there any other business? Item number 15. Item 14 is noted, I take it, by the way.
Noted.
Noted.
Item 15, any other business? Well, my only other business is to say, stay safe. We're not there yet, but I promise you this council is on your side, and we will do everything we possibly can to get through COVID and to strengthen our economy afterwards and begin to try and give people the lives and the ambitions that we think everyone in our borough deserves. So thank you very much and good night.
Thank you. Bye.
Very much.